everybody. Welcome to Drafty Toons, the Drafty Quarters production animation anime podcast.
Wait a minute. I thought this was going to be an episode of DQP Does.
Well, see, you're just special guest stars on my show because that's how I'm running this shit.
I don't know how I feel about that. Could we at least co-headline? Maybe call it a crossover or something?
Yeah, we can maybe do that.
We can maybe come up with a team name or something. I don't know.
But only on this episode because it's a crossover between all the Spider-Men. And that's the only way it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So we can just do weird multiversal team up stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine.
By the way, we're doing Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse on this episode of Drafty Toons. And with me, I have our special guests from DQP Does.
Shane.
Nathan.
Russell.
And your host, Cory, as always.
This time.
Everybody's favorite host, really. Deep down.
They haven't even heard your show yet. Come on now.
By the time this comes out, they have.
Whatever. Anyway.
So I wanted to start out, much how I did on when I guest starred on your show.
Okay.
With questions that I had, because I'm real comic dumb.
Okay.
I haven't read any of the comics. The only previous history I really have with Spider-Man is movies that have come out in the past few years.
Right.
Tobey Maguire. I've even seen the new Tom Holland ones. Well, one. I haven't seen the new one because it's not out yet.
Right.
And I think I might have saw parts of the Andrew Garfield ones, but I've been told that those are, by and large, just kind of a pass. Nobody really seems to like them.
Most of them are a pass, honestly. I didn't. I liked the Tobey Maguire ones, Sam Raimi, when they came out, the first two anyway.
The first two were good. Third
was garbage, and I think that's pretty much universally agreed upon. That has a lot to do with studio meddling and stuff like that.
Sure.
But there were a couple bright spots in that movie, but it still overall was garbage. And now I don't think they hold up nearly as well compared to all the other amazing superhero stuff we've gotten.
Sure. I would definitely argue that it forged the way for some of the amazing stuff we have now. But I would definitely agree it's not as good. It doesn't hold up. Right. But I was going to say, other than those movies, the only real experience I have with Spider-Man is I watched the 90s cartoon.
Right, yeah, which was very good. It wasn't
good.
Entirely comic accurate. Again, most things aren't, but it was really good.
Okay. I assumed it was comic accurate, but I never read the comics.
Some of it's pretty close.
Yeah, so I've heard some stuff you guys have mentioned in passing. It's oh, I know who that is from the show.
Right.
But then they also I don't know if it's all the same show or if I'm mixing up a couple different iterations of Spider-Man cartoons.
Right, because there's been half a dozen between then and now.
Yeah. So I know there's it starts out with semi-futuristic Spider-Man in the cartoon. And then eventually he just straight up goes to the future at one point. And then there's also a whole timeline where it's him in the future and there's animal people. Is that all still the same series or is that a different series?
I don't even know what you're talking about now, so.
Okay.
That's probably something else.
No, there's definitely a Spider-Man where he gets sent to the future for some reason.
There's a lot of weird shit in the 90s Spider-Man one once Madam Web comes around.
She's definitely a part of it.
Yeah, so there was actually kind of a Into the Spider-Verse thing in that show where they brought in Spider-Man from other universes.
They didn't have as much variation as what they had here.
Right. They were all pretty much just Peter.
Yeah, the biggest one different. Was there was the Spider-Man that had 4 arms.
Yeah.
Or 6 arms.
6 arms.
Yeah, 6 arms because he had 8 limbs.
Yes.
And then there was, but it just all seemed like different versions.
That happens to him in
the cartoon, show, yeah, and he turns into a giant spider and
right, but he fixes it, and then that universe he doesn't fix it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. But
So-
we're not here to talk about the show.
Right. Yeah,
we're here to talk about the movie.
Yes. So, other questions that you had about that?
Yeah. So my questions, starting with, where does this movie take place?
This movie actually takes place in the 1610 universe, which is the Ultimates universe. Now, it doesn't exactly happen the way that it happened in the
Comics?
Ultimate Comics.
Sure.
So, while it says that it's 1610, a lot of the other media has assigned itself or been assigned somewhere its own universe title. So that might change if it becomes part of some kind of canon.
Sure.
So, because like 1610, they didn't in the Ultimates, they didn't actually say it was like connected at all until very recently. Well, not very recently. I guess it was like 3 or 4 years ago, like 2015. Where stuff started to cross over. There was a event where a bunch of shit happens and a couple of characters from that universe, like all the universes end, and then they're remade into one, and Miles and some of his family end up surviving and coming to the 616, which is the main continuity that's been going on for 30 or 40 years.
Okay. So in the comics, it's the opposite of what happens in the movie.
Well, that's actually different too. So like the comics are so convoluted it's ridiculous. But
Well, yeah.
the death of Peter and of Prowler, his uncle Aaron, are not connected to Into the Spiderverse event. The Into the Spiderverse event actually happens mostly in the 616 universe, in the comics. So it includes all these characters and a bunch more actually, but it's not in the 1610 universe.
Okay. Which I guess answers my one question. I didn't understand who, as I wrote down, Purple Iron Spider. And I didn't realize who that was. Is Prowler a villain from the comics?
Yeah. So in the Ultimates universe, he never really becomes a good guy. He dies, and that's kind of like his Uncle Ben kind of situation, but he started as a villain.
Okay.
And then in the 616, he starts as like a villain, but becomes a good guy. So he becomes kind of like an anti-hero kind of character.
Okay. So I guess the instance where he just dies is very similar to what happens in the movie here.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
As far as I recall, I'd have to reread them, but
Also, what was up with the so like you come into the movie and there's basically a big fight. Like
yeah.
pretty much as soon as the movie starts. And there's Green Goblin,
Mm-hmm.
but he's a mutated monster.
It's because it's a different universe. Like, I don't remember if that's how. Do you, Russell or Nathan? Do you remember? Did you read the Spider-Man Ultimate stuff, Nathan?
I read the early stuff. I didn't
Okay.
get very far into it.
Which I
Russell-
guess we should take this moment to, what's your guys' previous experience? Nathan, do you have a lot of previous experience with Spider-Man?
I mean, I've seen every movie that has came out with Spider-Man in it, and as far as comics go, just some the Ultimate series and a couple others. Like, I don't super read comics, and anyone that listens to the MCU, DQP Does The MCU podcast knows that for sure.
Yeah, that's me and Russell's jam. But Russell, what's
So-
yours?
Spider-Man was my first introduction into comics.
Oh shit.
Which is I talk about extensively in one of our episodes. I think our episode 0 of DQP Does The MCU. I love Spider-Man. A lot of people compare Batman and Tony now, or Batman and Iron Man, whatever. But I think Spider-Man is actually the closest characterization to DC's Batman that Marvel has, because Batman is DC's flagship character,
Yes.
and Spider-Man, for the longest time, and I would say up till probably the MCU debuted, Spider-Man was Marvel's flagship character. He has the best rogues gallery out of all the Marvel characters, along with Batman having the best rogues gallery in the DC universe. But I watched the Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s as a kid, and my first comic book I ever bought was at a Hook's Pharmacy, and it was a Spider-Man comic. Yeah, Hook's.
Also, just buying comics at a pharmacy.
Yeah, right. That's weird.
Not when we were kids. It wasn't weird.
Yeah,
no, it wasn't weird then.
Fucking everywhere had a comic rack.
Yeah.
Even gas stations.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy.
You know, that's an interesting. So you guys are all a little bit older than me, not significantly, but a little bit. So
Why don't you calm down there, Sonny. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing comics much at all, but when I did see a rack that had comics, it was in a pharmacy. And it wasn't even like a CVS. It was like a local pharmacy.
Yeah.
And it just had like a rack with a bunch of comics. And it wasn't even individual issues. It was like the
Graphic.
prepackaged with
like 3 or 4 of them in there.
Yeah, you get like 5 or 3 or 4, however many random issues of comics.
I fucking hated those. Because they would always put something like kind of good on the top, and then everything else was garbage. So you're like,
to go off on this tangent a little bit, that was my introduction to comics. And it's interesting because my grandma bought it for me.
Yeah.
And I think on either side, it had like, on one side, it might have had like Superman or something. And then the other side, I think it had like a Street Sharks comic.
Okay.
Because it was the 90s and
Yep.
Street Sharks, say that 5 times fast, were still a thing. They were a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The Vin Diesel commercial.
But inside, tucked away, hidden, where you couldn't see it,
Witchblade.
Spawn.
Okay.
Oh,
close.
Which was by and far the most graphic thing I ever saw as a child.
Yeah.
Was the Spawn comic book where he gets like, he's like ripping people apart and there's like blood and gore all over the place. And I'm like,
yes.
Even as a child, I saw this and I'm like, I'm not supposed to be seeing this.
Right.
And like, I sat on it for a few days and then eventually I like took it to my mom and I'm like, so I don't want you to catch me with this, but this came in with the comics grandma bought me. And she's like, well, you've already seen it now, so I guess there's no taking it away from you. I was like, well, I appreciate that, I guess. But I was like, and then like grandma got in a fit, and I think she called up to the thing and was like, you guys need to put a warning, something on the comics, because there's M-rated comics in with the PG comics, and it's like a whole thing. And
that's hilarious.
My mom bought me a comic with boobs in it and didn't even know.
That's why I asked if it was Witchblade, because it's basically like Spawn, but with titties. I mean, well, pretty much everything. Like when she would change into her like costume and shit, it was like there was a little tendril covering nips and like a little tendril going down her crotch, and then basically like was a thong in the backside. So it was basically like she was naked, you know. So,
I read one of those, and it was Witchblade and Wolverine, and they had just got married in Vegas.
What the shit?
It was really interesting. They ended up fighting at the end of it.
Yeah.
That's what all good marriages
Because
come to. They get done in Vegas anyway.
And
but
crossovers. Like, obviously, they couldn't stay married because it was a crossover. Just like this. We can't stay friends because this is a crossover.
oh,
So I got 2 things real quick. So on the comic book racks in stores,
yes.
I don't know exactly what the reasoning was, but I suspect it was some sort of distribution deal between being a actual comic book retailer and being someone who had just had comics available. But the comic book racks in like pharmacies or even Borders and Barnes and Nobles used to have a singles rack. Those racks were always 2 weeks behind the actual releases. So if you went to an actual comic book store, you could get the release that week, but the stores with just the racks...
Personal subscription.
Yeah, or a personal subscription, but the stores with just the racks wouldn't have those new issues until 2 weeks later.
Yep.
And that was something I noticed when, in like 2007, 2008, when I was like really heavy into collecting comics and actually hunting down the issues that I wanted.
That was always a thing, and it's a thing with like collectibles too, with comic book stores and specifically collectible stores
Yeah.
versus like regular retailers.
Yeah.
So like Marvel Legends and stuff like that, they'll get them early
Right.
at the collectible stores, and the same thing with the comics. It's still like that, and then they do like we would like Marvel Unlimited to endorse us, but we endorse it. We all, I mean, I feel like a few of us are subscribed to it, and
Right.
it's like 8 months behind or something like that. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Which honestly, I feel like the streaming service being behind makes sense.
It makes a lot more sense. I just don't like that it's that far back. I wish it was like maybe 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, 2 or 3 months would be nice. I also think it's cool that the retail, the distribution of things like that, those niche markets are set up like that.
They're taking care of the brick and mortar stores, and trying to push their subscriptions too.
Yeah.
So
I really like that.
Is that digital? That
Yes.
digital subscription, is that owned by Marvel?
I believe
Marvel
so.
Comics? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I just...
It comes out of my bank as Marvel Unlimited, not as like something else.
Well,
And
there's
it's, Marvel properties.
an interesting thing. So D&D, again, we're off on a tangent.
We're
from
off
the movie.
way completely off. The
But
I'll bring us back
D&D
with my second point.
Okay, thank you.
This is normal.
D&D has a web service now called D&D Beyond.
yes.
D&D Beyond is not owned by Wizards of the Coast.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I just recently learned this. So there's this, because of that, they are considered like a reseller of the books and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which is partly why you can't, like, a subscription service to D&D Beyond is separate. Like, you can't get a subscription service to D&D Beyond and then just have access to the books.
Right.
The only way you get access to the books is if you buy the digital copy of the book, and then you can use the content from your digital copy in the website through the interface.
Right.
But you can buy a service to D&D Beyond, like a monthly or yearly subscription that allows you access to more functionality on the site. But it's like this weird catch-22 almost, where they can't give you access to the Wizard stuff because they're still technically a reseller. So you have to buy
That's so weird.
the books in order to get access to the stuff in the books.
That makes sense. That makes sense with why I was confused the other day, because when I was looking at it, I was like, what do you mean I have to have already purchased these things?
Yeah.
That's what I
It's also why-
service for.
If you've bought a hard copy of the book, you can't just register a code with D&D Beyond to get the digital version. Because they are a reseller,
That's ridiculous.
they have to sell you the book
I hate
Yeah.
that.
in order to get the digital copy of it. You can't just
Interesting.
redeem a code because it's not Wizards. They wouldn't get money off of you redeeming
Right.
your code
Yeah.
because you didn't buy the book off them.
I mean, unless they like shared profits from the subscription services,
It'd
which
have to
would
be
be
potentially,
reliable for.
It'd have to be a deeper commingling contract.
Yeah.
But I just found that interesting because I didn't know if your Marvel thing was similar, and that's why it was so far behind.
I don't think it's different. I think it's part of Marvel because you can also buy the books on there because they're available digitally, but they are behind a paywall beyond the subscription paywall. So you can like buy them basically for cover price to get like I don't know how far they go, if they go up to current or if it's like a couple like weeks or months before current.
And a lot of comics come with digital codes, and you can redeem those on the Unlimited app. So,
so it's got to be.
It's and at the very bottom of the app, it has all the Marvel legal lingo for properties and stuff like that. But I can bring us back to the movie if you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ultimate Universe Green Goblin is monstrous.
Okay.
Interesting.
I thought he was, because there's again going back to Marvel Legends, there's a Build-A-Figure of that Green Goblin.
Oh, okay.
So
So in this universe that the movie takes place, he's just like he gets mutated or something.
Yeah, he's got wings apparently, and is like 5 stories tall.
Okay. So is it? And I mean, I'm assuming you have the information right in front of you now.
I have the biography pulled up.
So, from my understanding, Green Goblin essentially gets exposed to some kind of gas and then goes insane, more or less.
He gets powers from it in the regular universe. He gets like super strength and stuff.
Okay, but it also like makes him crazy, right?
I mean, he was already on his way.
Okay. He wasn't exactly stable before.
Right.
This kind of pushed him over the edge. Okay. But, I mean, that's more or less, it's the gas thing. So it's probably safe to assume that in this universe, the gas just mutated him instead of just gave him powers.
So what's interesting is that Norman worked with Otto Octavius and Justin Hammer in the Ultimates.
There's all kinds of weird shit. They were just like, hey, we've got all these characters, let's keep them kind of close.
Yeah.
But like change like their associations and stuff a little bit.
And Hammer's from Iron Man, right?
Yeah, he's a Iron Man villain.
Okay. I remember him from the Iron Man 2, which was
He's
arguably the best of the DQP Does podcast.
Nah. Did you listen to Winter Soldier?
Yeah, but I wasn't on it. So
He also doesn't like that movie. That's why we're not friends.
All right.
Yeah, so essentially, I mean, it looks like he was exposed to very similar to the regular origin, but instead of driving him insane, it made him monstrous.
okay.
But it also looks like he can go in and out of that form,
Oh, that's interesting.
as this biography reads.
So he's Goblin Hulk?
Yeah, or well, I think he like controls it. But yeah, essentially. So that's weird.
So then my other question about one of the other villains that shows up later is female Doc Ock.
Yeah.
Is this just like a gender swap version of it, or
In the Ultimates, it shows Otto Octavius it says Otto Octavius. So I don't know where female Doc Ock came from.
what was her name? Wasn't
Liv.
Otto or
It's
anything?
Liv.
Yeah, it
or
was
Olivia.
Octavius.
Yeah, Olivia.
So
Octavius.
is she related, daughter to, wife of?
I'm assuming it's daughter, but I don't know. I haven't read enough Ultimates. We're just gonna Google everything.
This is the Google portion of the podcast.
All right, Olivia Octavius is from Earth TRN 700.
So that's a different universe.
Oh,
Yeah, it looks like this is her only appearance.
So while also being Universe 1610, Into the Spider-Verse also takes place, is also referred to as Earth TRN 700.
So it's the same. That one is this one.
It's probably actually because it's not exactly the same, so it's different.
Yeah, so
This is like 1610A or something stupid like that because it's claiming to be the same, but there's differences from the other 1610.
yeah, she is based on Otto Octavius from 1610.
So for whatever reason, they just decided to make her a female this time. If nothing else, I really loved it for the joke where he's like, I gotta check my biases and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, because he assumes that the male scientist is the lead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
that
was a
was
great
good.
joke.
I liked that.
Which actually leads in, this movie has really great humor in it. And I really love how it's very self-aware, like throughout the whole thing.
Yes.
And like every character is pretty much aware, more or less to some extent, of what they are.
I loved the origin breakdowns.
Yeah. I loved it was like a little comic, it was like a little vignette, like this is my backstory.
Yeah.
And they were all the same but different.
Yep.
And
I
it was
loved
just a big joke about origins.
Yeah.
It was so good.
All right, one more time for the last time. 7 times.
I liked it. I thought it added some humor into it too.
No, I
Plus,
think
it gave you a little bit of small knowledge about the character.
right.
I
I think the movie is fucking hilarious.
I also noticed how immediately after Miles was bit, he became more of he essentially became a comic book character after he was bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like he's like, why are my thoughts so loud? And it's when he actually had thought bubbles like
Yeah.
appearing.
Yeah.
He had all
in the
the
show.
exposition boxes.
Yeah. So it was like, oh, now he's a comic book character. And it's like, that's why his thoughts are so loud, because they have to be loud enough for the people to read them. And,
Yep.
Yeah, 90% of this movie was done really well.
All right, let's hear it. What's the 10?
The story.
You didn't like the story?
I love everything about this movie except for the actual plot of the movie.
Okay.
It was, I don't know, it was boring. Like, it wasn't, this was very, so for a cartoon, or animation, I don't really, cartoon might not be right, whatever. This was so character driven, and I loved that.
Yeah.
I loved every character. Every character had, even if it was through like humor and only humor, every character had character development. Like literally every character, except for what's the great Tombstone? Except for Tombstone, he was just
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
like there. But
Is that
Olivia,
who the like albino looking guy was?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
Tombstone.
Olivia had character development. Kingpin had amazing motivation and character development.
Continue, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It wasn't.
What's your
I
point?
just didn't think it was executed very well.
Okay.
Like,
You're, like amazing motivation, but then like that's the driving point of the whole plot, but you didn't like the plot.
Yeah. So there was only like 30 seconds in which Kingpin was like explained in 2 separate scenes, which is fine. But the whole movie was take this stick and stick it
Yes.
in that thing
Yes, and press the green button.
and press the green button.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
simple and elegant. And
You wanted more than that?
I always want more than that. I'm not saying it's bad, okay? Like, it's a great movie, but I didn't enjoy the overarching plot of the movie.
I think that was like the best part, is that it was so ridiculously simple, but they couldn't do it until the very end. And like it didn't interfere with any of the character development and the character interactions and all the subparts of the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I think to play into Shane's point, I think the reason the plot is so simple is to allow room for the characters to take the spotlight. Because
Yeah.
if it was very plot centric, I don't think you would get as much character development.
No, you wouldn't. But there's so as many characters as there were, for as much character development as there was, like that was all done well. I just don't like the simplicity of the plot. And that's really my only issue with the movie too. So like everything, like the humor was extremely well placed throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
Like it was an emotional roller coaster, it was up and down. But I rarely like a simple plot. So that's
You just wanted it to be more complicated.
yeah.
Okay.
Especially when you have interdimensional travel. I also didn't like the excuse they gave for why they had to go back. The like cellular degeneration for them not being able to stay in those universes.
Okay.
I get that you need to make the characters want to go, like you have to give something to make the characters want to go back.
You
But
think they had enough motivation?
I think
on
they
their
had
own.
enough motivation to not do that. But you also have to figure out how to hinder 6 Spider-Men in combat.
Yeah.
So like
That's fair.
it was a smart tactic. but
I also don't know that it hindered them really. Like in that big final fight scene, they
It
weren't
did
like,
several times actually.
did it really?
Oh
yeah, there were a lot of moments they were trying to do stuff and then they kept getting fucked up.
Yeah, they would
But-
desync and like get punched or
Yeah.
shot at. Mostly
Okay.
Noir getting shot at and like
Okay, yeah,
Spider coming down and taking the bullets.
yeah,
or
I do remember
laser
that
blasts or whatever.
now. Earlier in the fight. That definitely happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas like the cellular degeneration might be believable. I don't feel like they needed it because like you said, each character had its own motivation to get back to its own world.
Yeah.
So like
Like Peter Parker B had the whole like I gotta get back and
Yeah.
fix things with MJ because I see how things worked out for this Spider-Man. It could work out for me too.
Yeah, but that's why, I mean, that's part of why it was in the movie, though, because he was worried about messing it up again, so he was just going to let himself die to
Right.
the degeneration instead of going back and play it off like he was being a martyr.
It's not a fair comparison between Spider-Man because Peter B. Parker is like late 30s. We'll say 36. The Peter Parker that died, that's voiced by Chris Pine, was 26. There's a 10-year difference in those Peter Parkers.
Yeah.
So, if anything, he's seen what he had,
Okay. That's
not
an
what he
interesting
could
point.
have had.
Yeah.
He already had all that.
Yeah,
And he's seen where his life went wrong. And then the deal with Miles, who's 15, 16 in this, so you see the 10-year gaps and all that.
Yeah.
He sees what it's like to have a kid, and that is not so bad. So I think that was a driving force in him wanting to go back along with the cellular degeneration.
So now, one point I do know, not because I read it, do you think the reason he didn't want to have kids is because in the comics, MJ ends up dying from them having sex? Do you think he knows about that or has theories about that and that's why he doesn't want to have kids?
What is that in? That's
Because
It
from what
probably wasn't in his Spiderverse.
I haven't read the comic, but I've read about it, if that makes sense. And essentially, they have sex so many
That's-
times that he gives her radiation
Radiation, yeah.
poisoning
she
from
gets,
his
like,
semen.
radiation poisoning or some kind of cancer. I don't remember.
I
Is
think
that
both.
the Spider-Man The End? Or God, what is that?
feel like that's
It might be
feel
the
like
end.
it's the end.
He ends up dying at the end of it, I think. It's the one with the red coat, with the red like button up down the side coat.
Yeah.
Who does he fight in that? God damn, I can't fucking remember it. I've read too many things once and then not read them again.
I googled Mary Jane radiation poisoning. But died of radiation poisoning as a result of constant exposure to the radioactive isotopes in his blood.
Yeah,
Well,
blood.
So that happened on Earth 70237.
It doesn't say what book.
That's what I'm looking for.
but I thought it was interesting because, like, as soon as I heard that, it's like, oh, like, she wanted kids and I didn't. That was the first thought that sprung to mind.
Well,
for
it's
me.
it's a common worry in a lot of characters in comics, like where they have like a weird
Yeah.
mutation because of a certain thing, and then they don't want to have kids, or they're like worried about having kids, or then they do have kids and there is a problem, or they're automatically mutated the same way, or a mix between the parents. So
Sure.
it's not uncommon reasoning.
Plus, I feel like with Spider-Man, there's definitely a worry about the family dynamic.
Right, because that was always the thing too, was throughout in pretty much every iteration too, in all the different media, like his being a superhero always comes in the way of his relationships, whether it's family or personal.
Yeah.
Friends, girlfriends, doesn't matter.
Yes.
Professional relationships too, and it also puts all those people in danger. So that is also a strong motivator a lot of times for him, especially in the comics, to not start those relationships because he doesn't want to get those people hurt.
Much how Gwen in this movie was.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Because she lost the Peter Parker of hers.
Well, I mean, the normal Peter Parker lost her,
He killed her indirectly, right?
Yeah, it was accident. Her neck snapped when he caught her with his webs when Green Goblin threw her off the Brooklyn Bridge.
Leave that in.
It almost sounded like a really shitty New York accent. Brooklyn Bridge over there.
So it's a Spider-Man comic book called Spider-Man Reign.
Oh yeah, that's what it was.
I actually have this one. It was written by Carrie Andrews and Jose Villarrubia.
Does it say who he fights? I can't remember who it is.
The Sinner Six.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't list
Whatever.
characters. Here we go. The Sinner Six is made up of Scorpion, Electro, Mysterio, Kraven the Hunter, Hydro Man, and the Sandman. It also features the Hypno Hustler and Otto Octavius, Venom, Kingpin. All right.
So pretty much all the villains.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of them.
greatest hits. And I didn't hear Green Goblin, but close enough.
So I know one of the things we kept coming back on while we were watching the movie was how great a soundtrack this movie has.
Oh yeah, it's
And
fantastic.
I think it's very much so because this was put out by Sony,
I'm sure it is.
which is also why there was heavy plugs for Sony headphones.
Yeah,
Like they might as well have been wearing Beats, but they're the Sony equivalent.
yeah,
And like I always notice it in music videos when like the artists are just wearing headphones for no reason, and they're always Beats or whoever sponsored them.
Yep.
And it's like a very obvious product placement kind of thing, but it really stuck out in the animation as
Yeah.
a very obvious product placement.
We actually gotten Coca-Cola and Sony beating into us the last 2 days.
Yeah.
Watching fucking Blade Runner 2049 and then this.
Good plug, by the way.
So
DQP does Blade Runner 2049, part of our Cyberpunk series.
Coke was plugged a little bit in this, but to me that wasn't as blatant and obvious.
No.
It seemed more like because they went from Coca-Cola to like cola soda that was stylized the same way.
Yeah, it's Coca Soda with K's.
Yeah. So like it was for me that was like this an interesting like universe change kind of.
Yeah,
dynamic.
well, it's because everybody in the world knows what the Coca-Cola logo looks like.
Yep.
Right? So they used that Coca Soda that looks kind of similar, but is like, different, plainly different to kind of, clue you in as a world building thing that you're in a different world.
And then they later come back and actually show a Coca-Cola logo.
Right, yeah. In Peter B. Parker's.
Yes. Which brings up an interesting point. Spider-Man from Miles' universe,
Right.
is that Tobey Maguire Spider-Man?
No, it's
Because the scenes at the beginning were all scenes, granted, they're probably scenes from the comics as well, but they were all scenes from the Tobey Maguire movies.
Not all
that
of
was
them.
just a joke.
Not all of them. One of them was actually a Homecoming Easter egg.
Yeah.
And one of them was an Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man scene.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just
So
an
it was
Easter egg.
just
Which
yeah.
ones were those two? I don't remember those.
We'll get to it.
We can get to it when we get
The-
to Easter eggs. But since you asked, the scene where he's got all the webs strung out on the Brooklyn Bridge, that's
Okay.
actually from Homecoming, but it was the ferry that he had it. So there's the difference.
Okay. And then what was the Garfield one?
the whatever scene had the lizard in it. I don't remember exactly how the scene played out, but it looked just
okay.
like when he beats the lizard back into submission when the lizard turns into a human.
Okay. So I guess in my
Lizard
mind,
Man.
I assume that's just what they added on it because there were some of those flashback scenes where they added on to from this universe. I guess I just assumed that those were from them adding on. But like there was the iconic kissing MJ upside down thing from the Tobey
Yep.
Maguire,
Right. Which
the stopping the train from Tobey Maguire.
And the dance from
Yes, the dance was a huge one from the
Yeah.
third one.
from
And
3.
it even like played the music and everything too.
And he talked shit about it.
Yet very funny moment.
Yes.
I love that he talks shit about it. Which is also great because like Sony did all those movies, right?
Right.
Because they're the ones that have owned the Spider-Man license for years now.
Since
Like
the early
15
'90s.
Is it more than that? So it'd be like 20 years?
Yeah.
20 plus?
I guess they acquired
It was like
it'd
98, I
be
thought.
late '90s because they acquired it from Fox. Because Fox had Spider-Man in the '90s. Because the Spider-Man cartoon series was produced by Fox,
yeah.
and crossed over with the X-Men Fox series.
Yes. And the Iron Man.
I don't remember. Did that cross over with the Spider-Man cartoon?
Spider-Man, yeah.
I didn't even remember an Iron
Was
Man
that
cartoon.
what was that Invincible Iron Man? Probably.
That was just Iron Man.
Oh, it was just Iron Man.
Yeah. I am Iron Man.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all.
I think I mix that and the Invincible Iron Man cartoon up all the time. Because the Invincible Iron Man cartoon, I think, was like 2002.
Tony had like long hair. They thought his heart was actually all the way over to the left. Like he had like an arc reactor like all the way over completely on the left side of his chest.
Weird.
Yeah.
We should track that down.
Interesting.
It's pretty awful. Like you remember in the 90s Spider-Man where sometimes when he was swinging through the city it would like be CG and it was really bad.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
3D,
Yeah.
where the rest of it was all 2D.
Right. A lot of the Iron Man show was like that, not just like random
him
scenes.
swinging.
Like a lot of it was that terrible 3D CG.
Which that's a pretty common thing in animation in general, especially from that era.
Yeah.
They get to a part where they're like moving through a lot of stuff, or they have a lot of times I see it with characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I use character as a very broad term. It could be anything from an actual person to a like
Vehicle or whatever.
vehicle or a giant moving robot.
Yeah.
I notice that a lot, especially in like anime and stuff. Everything will be 2D except for this big giant moving robot that they have to keep track of.
Right.
And it's just simply based off the fact that it's easier for them to animate the 3D, the giant moving thing, and keep scale and proportion and everything in control,
Right. Then to
being
hand
3D,
animate it.
than to try to puppet it in a 2D environment.
Right.
Or hand draw it. Like, I mean, anybody that's watched any kind of like hand drawn animation, especially in anime, you notice sometimes scale gets a little funky.
Yes.
Like we noticed it a lot when we watched Berserk.
Yep.
The original Berserk anime series. Like his sword proportions are all over the place. Like it gets bigger, it's huge, and then it's smaller, and it fits whatever size they need it to fit.
Yep.
But when you get into 3D stuff, it's a lot easier to keep track of your proportions because you're just moving the same model around, and it
Yes.
moves much like in real life. When you get further away from the camera, it gets smaller and stuff
Yep.
like that, and it's easier to do that when you have a computer environment to control that.
Yep.
And they actually have like 2D technology that they can do that with as well now, where it's just puppeted essentially, almost like a paper doll.
Yeah.
But it's all done still in a computer, and they don't have to draw over and over and over again like they did before.
Right.
Or they have an interesting thing that they can do in 3D where they can apply filters to it to make it look 2D,
Right.
much like they did in this movie.
Yeah, with the cell shading.
Yeah, everything in this movie was actually done in 3D, but they applied filters to it to make it look comic booky and more two-dimensional.
Yeah, and they also went with a lower frame rate so that everything
was very stuttery, yeah.
it was stuttery, but it was also smooth. Like there were no like transitional frames.
Yeah.
So one of the things, if we had watched all the special features, I watched a few of them the first time I watched the movie. They talk a lot about the animation, and one of the things they wanted was for you to be able to pause the movie at any point, and it wouldn't be blurry, but it would look like a frame from a comic book.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
because you don't always have that. There's a lot of in anime and animation in general. You have a lot of transitional stuff.
Yeah, you have
and
transitional
you get, like,
frames.
weird morphed figures sometimes when
Right.
they're transitioning from A to B.
Right.
So it's interesting that they kept that in mind. Not that people pause their movie regularly. I mean, you don't typically want to consider that as you're animating something.
Right.
But it's interesting that that was their thought process.
Yeah, because
behind
they
it.
just wanted it to be as close to a comic book as possible.
I would say they nailed it.
Oh, that's great.
I bet that also has something to do with why there's over 100 Easter eggs in this movie.
110.
110.
I wanted Nathan to be our Easter egg guy for this since he
He's
does
kind
such a
of
great
pissed
job
off
of it.
now, I think.
I'm not going to read 110 Easter eggs. I'll skip through them.
Would you have for DQP Does?
I wouldn't. No.
Okay.
He wouldn't read
I'm
like
satisfied then.
40 for DQP Does.
I wasn't for lack of not wanting to read them.
Yeah, there haven't been 40 in anything that we've watched.
I just want you to appreciate
There was like
my
30
show
some in one of them.
as much as you would his show.
Oh. Well, I mean, fuck Shane.
It's
There we go.
our show. Fuck you.
You started this.
Eh.
It's our show, Nathan.
So, Miles' dad,
Go ahead.
what's his name?
No idea.
Jeff Davis
What's Miles' last name?
Morales.
Oh, man, if it had been Miles Davis.
Yeah,
One of the things I like about this, and I don't know much about Miles Morales, but I like the fact that his it was his uncle that died, okay, and you still get all that aspect, but he's still got his parents there, so he's still got his dad in his life too,
Yeah.
and I like how you got to see how it affected both characters and brought them together, but they really weren't that far apart in the first place. So it's kind of similar in him losing his uncle, but it's completely different. I feel like it's a more family friendly, if you can get family friendly, way to introduce Spider-Man to younger readers. And also from a comic book aspect of adding a death in, but not completely losing your audience.
because it's still tragic, but not as tragic.
Exactly.
I really did like the contrast and the similarities between him, Miles losing his uncle, and Peter obviously loses his uncle in pretty much every other incarnation of Spider-Man.
Yeah, unless
Yeah.
they're not Peter. Yeah.
But I always thought that was a nice comparison, a nice similarity that they shared. It's like,
And-
so this is
and
just
I-
a Spider-Man thing.
Also really liked his uncle playing the Prowler. Like,
I didn't
I don't
see
know
that
much
coming.
about that villain, but that guy was badass.
Yeah. I didn't see that coming until the moment Miles went back to his uncle's place in the spider suit or whatever. And was
Yeah.
like writing the note, and then Prowler shows up, and I'm like, oh, okay, so Prowler's his uncle.
I was trying real hard not to spoil that for you because I didn't know if you knew.
I had no idea.
But yeah, I was sitting there and I was watching it and I was like, man, they're really going to hit this fucking hard. And then they did. And I was like, ugh, what feelings.
Yep.
Like, I had no idea that was coming, and I was like, oh man, who's this? And literally, I wrote down Purple Iron Spider in my notes because I had no idea who Prowler was.
Yeah.
And then they said his name, and I'm like, Prowler? Question mark. And then I underneath that, I have Uncle with an arrow pointing up,
Nice.
connecting all the dots. as
Yeah,
the movie
yeah.
you were
plays out.
super confused because you were like, I don't know who some of these characters are, but we've got alternate versions of them. Cool.
Yeah, because like I was like, well, I know who Green Goblin is. Like I know the mains,
Yeah, right.
but it's like, why are they different? This is weird,
Right.
but okay.
Yep.
Like, let's just roll with it. And I just assumed that it was because it took place later in the timeline, and it's like stuff that wasn't ever covered by the movies or the cartoons, but was covered
but
later
it's
in
a
the
totally
books.
different universe.
But yeah, it's just a
Yep.
totally different universe where different stuff happened. So that's interesting. I also, like to circle back on a point we were talking about, the animation style, how
Yes.
everything looked comic booking. I noticed they put the little dots on everything.
Yep. as a filter, but yeah.
I know them as like pop culture dots, but I don't know
Right.
what they're actually called.
It's a old coloring style that was used by the printers. So like they would actually color it a certain way, but then the printer actually colored in gradients of less dots or less. It was less colors. They used less colors to create other colors by doing gradients of dots. But you can see the dots on like the pop culture stuff, and if you get like actually old comic books versus now when you look at like a printed page, you probably don't see the dots because they're so tiny and close together.
Yeah.
Still does the same thing, because like if you buy a printer, it doesn't have 256 colors or 16 million.
Right.
It's got 4.
Yeah. And that's what your DPI is.
Right, and it mixes those colors, but it doesn't mix them by actually mixing them. It just like prints, this gradient of yellow and then this gradient of magenta
It's also how
over it.
pixels work.
Yeah, and it like but old comics, they would use all the primary colors to do that, but you would see all the dots, and then sometimes there would be a printing error, and like. You would see Spider-Man's outline, but then like his color would be shifted over and stuff like that. That would happen all the time.
Oh. That's interesting. See, I thought that was like a stylistic choice. It never occurred to me that that was just an error in the printing press.
Yes.
Okay, because I've definitely seen that imitated a lot.
Yep.
And stuff. And I guess every time I've seen it imitated, it was a stylistic
right,
choice.
because it was like supposed to look old-timey.
But it never occurred to me that started as an error.
Yeah, it was old printing error.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because like a type head would be like offset or something
Yeah.
that it wasn't supposed to be, so it would print all the comics the same. So then like all the comics would have, and somebody would fuck up, so like all of Spider-Man would be red in a page instead of having the blue and the black. It would just be like missing one of the typefaces or something.
Interesting.
There's all kinds of stuff like that in printing of old comics. It doesn't really happen anymore because everything's digital and everything, but
Right, yeah. We've progressed a bit from there.
yeah.
And speaking of comics, I really liked how they kept throwing down like the covers of comics.
Yeah.
So like for whatever reason in this universe, comics were also a thing.
Yeah.
I noticed you kind of had a question about that as we were watching it.
It was more like kind of questioning if the humor of that particular joke was worth the suspension of belief. And I liked when they would explain their origin. They would like do their origin thing,
comic.
and the comic book would pop up. I thought that was kind of cool, but I also don't like when movies talk to me specifically.
You don't like breaking the fourth wall, which
Not-
those comics
But-
kind of existed in that fourth wall.
Right.
But
space.
the only one, the first one was not breaking the fourth wall because
The first one was my favorite.
yeah, because that Spider-Man was famous in
Right.
that universe,
Right.
so they actually wrote comic books of his origin.
Yeah.
yeah,
So the first one was my favorite, and I thought it was funny when he's looking through the comics and the things that he just did
Yeah.
are the things he's saying.
Did you
I thought
notice
that was humorous.
that they changed his name in that comic? That he was Billy. He wasn't Peter.
I didn't notice that.
'Cause when he gets more later,
Uh-huh.
and he's like trying to figure out how to be Spider-Man because
Right.
Peter died, and he's like gonna jump off the building.
Uh-huh.
He like looks at one of the books, and it has Peter standing on the edge of a building, and he's like, "Okay, you can do it, Billy," or something like that. But he
'Cause they
calls
wouldn't have
himself
known
Billy
that
because they didn't
Spider-Man
know that he was Peter.
was Peter, yeah. That's cool. I like that.
that is interesting. I didn't catch that either.
I like the meta humor in things. And I like certain fourth wall breaks, like especially if it's built into a character like Deadpool. Like I
Sure.
know Deadpool's talking to me as the audience. Like I get that.
That's like part of
I-
the shtick.
Don't like when the
Spider-Man?
writers are specifically talking to me through the movie. There's like a difference there. I'd have to probably give examples, maybe. I don't know. If you're picking
Yeah, if
up
you
what
have
I'm
one
putting
off
down.
top head.
I guess there's quite a few things that so a character walks through a dark alley and you don't know who that character is, and they just pickpocketed someone, or they just stole something from somewhere, and a character pickpockets another character to have a thing that they need that thing. The character walks down, we'll say a dark alley, gets to the dark alley, takes a long look across the horizon, and then looks down at his hand at the thing that he just pickpocketed, and the camera cuts to his hand to show you, the audience, that he has the thing.
Right.
Like, that stuff is unnecessary when you have good writing. So, but it's often used to pander to the audience to make sure the audience is paying attention.
Spoon feeding.
Yeah, spoon feeding. You're spoon feeding your audience. So, like, but not every movie is written for me.
Sure.
And that's the thing I say often, because I try to remind myself that. But the certain things like that I don't necessarily enjoy. I think it takes away from the movie. I like rewatchability. And when you do things like that, it takes away from the rewatchability of a movie.
Okay.
So if you have to watch the movie multiple times, now I know some people will say, if I have to watch the movie multiple times to pick everything up, why would I want to do that? But that's part of the fun when you watch a movie the first time and you're like,
Trying to catch everything.
oh shit. And when something happens and then you watch it again and you're like, wait, that's foreshadowed in the beginning.
Yeah.
Wait,
Okay.
that's that slight hand movement he made to get that thing off that person. That's why he has that.
I have some give and
So-
take to that. I like when they have depth and richness in that you can catch things on multiple viewings. However, I don't think that it should be the standard in that in order to understand everything that happens in this movie, you have to watch it multiple times. You should be able to tell your story in one sit through without requiring multiple viewing.
Right. It should just be, I think it should get better every time you watch it.
I would agree with that.
And
That's fine.
And that's kind of how I think you make something better by having to watch it multiple times, is not spoon feeding every detail to the audience.
Sure.
So,
It also depends on who your target audience is.
right. That's
which
also
arguably the target audience for this is not us.
correct.
I mean, the movie's rated, what, PG?
Yeah.
So you're considering a crowd under 13
Yeah.
is probably their target audience.
There's a lot of characters that die for a PG movie.
That's what it's rated.
I think this was more intended as a family viewing, not necessarily something you sit your kids down with and to distract them or whatever. This is more like a family movie, like, hey, watch this with your family.
Which a lot of kids' movies are more geared that way. It's like, this isn't a movie that's purely dumb for the kids to watch and understand. It's got a little something for everybody. Like, I just went and watched Detective Pikachu.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that movie is very much directed at children.
Right.
Because it's a children's movie. However, there was a lot of adult humor in it that goes over the heads of children.
Children, It's for children of the 90s is what it's for.
Arguably, yes. But
it's for children of the 90s to take their kids to.
yes, that is exactly what it is for.
For the children of the 90s to enjoy. But also
For their
because
kids
most
to
of
be
those-
like, oh, Pikachu.
Yeah. Most of those kids of the 90s have kids now. So
Which we can get into that movie on a separate podcast. But
and I foresee, when talking about cartoons and animation, I foresee me having a lot of the same issues, because I see it more often in animated things than I do live action TV.
Mhm.
And it's especially bad with characters pointing out what they're doing while you're watching them do it. And it's so dumb, and it drives me nuts. Like, I love Avatar. Avatar is a great series.
The Last Airbender.
The Last Airbender, yeah.
We
I
have to
don't
clarify
need
these days.
Aang to tell me what he's doing when I'm watching him do it. It's
Sure.
fucking mind numbing.
But you're not the target audience for that.
I like
But-
the post commercial recap of the last section of the show every 5 minutes when you're watching one of those shows.
Yeah.
Especially when it like fades to black and then comes back in because it's like,
Yeah, 'cause
here's
you're
where the
binge
commercial
watching.
break is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not the target audience, but I feel like a lot of animation even fails children because a lot of animation treats children like they're idiots, and they're not. Like, you also don't need to spoon feed them what the character's doing while the character's doing it.
That's fair. I think it largely depends on the age range you're trying to target, though.
Right.
If you're trying to target like preteens kids, then
Right.
you're probably right. They don't really need to be handheld. They can pick up stuff. They're starting to mature.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to target like younger kids, like 5, 6, kids that aren't as developed,
right.
then you're gonna have to spoon feed them. Otherwise, they're gonna get bored with it. They're
Well,
not
yeah,
gonna understand. They weren't paying attention 5 seconds ago when they said, "I'm gonna go do this thing."
Right.
You need to remind them every 5 seconds. Oh, hey, I'm doing this thing now.
Right. But as a, I wonder if as a medium that kids are consistently consuming, which is the actual problem? Is it the problem that the medium's doing it, so it's pandering to the kids, so the kids get used to it, so that's what the kids expect? Or if the medium was smarter, would the kids adapt to the medium? You know what I
It's
mean?
an interesting point.
Like, I would like to see research on
Yeah.
the development of children based off
versus
of
the other.
cartoons, especially now in our climate and in our world where you have parents that are constantly working and using television and things to babysit children. Like,
That was very much my generation.
yeah. I mean, I had a little bit of that, and I seen it out of some of my classmates in school, but it's gotten worse as time's progressed. So I think it'd be interesting to see research based on that, on which actually is the fault of.
Yeah. Which came first.
Yeah.
And then which really needs to happen. Like, do
Right.
we need to do this to keep kids interested, or will kids remain interested in quality content regardless of the hand-holding?
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting point.
I think you're overestimating how much they give a shit. They just want them to pay attention enough to sell them toys for the most part.
I mean, ultimately, yes, I agree. And I think that's why there's a lot of the hand-holding, because it's like, hey, pay attention. Hey, pay attention.
Right.
And they're trying to get the kids' attention. But you do raise an interesting point in that, would the kids pay attention if you weren't telling them to pay attention?
Right.
Would that result in a better quality content and thus maybe create more kids to pay attention to it because, hey, this thing's really good? Or is it purely about the selling of the merchandise, which unfortunately is often the case?
Yeah, and I agree with that. But if you take a show, let's say Arthur, which is on PBS, that's been on for, I just found out the other day that it's still on television with new episodes. What?
Yeah. When they revealed like Ratburn was gay, like totally cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's an interesting dynamic, and I'm glad that we're seeing more acceptance in all mediums. But the biggest news to me was that Arthur's still airing new episodes. What?
So you take a show like that that's educational and about actual, moral issues that has depth to it, and like, I watched the shit out of that as a kid. How many other kids are
I
maybe
watched
still
Arthur.
watching that or isn't watching
And
that, I guess, 'cause they have
arguably
cable.
zero merchandise.
Yeah.
Books, but what else?
There used to be like clothes and stuff.
Yeah, I mean a few, but it's not like kids were rushing to get
No.
Arthur toys.
No.
And I think a lot of that is because it is on PBS.
Right.
Public broadcasting. So they
Yeah.
didn't have to worry about funding the show through the sale of toys, which
Yeah.
is the way a lot of animation gets funded. They go on a deficit on the show and they use the show to sell the toys, and they hope to make up their money for the show on the back end with
Right.
merchandise sales.
Yeah, and then when you have something like Spider-Man, like, you're obviously shooting for
Yeah.
merchandise sells.
Which,
Oh yeah.
arguably, a property like this is already established enough that they can do really good things with it because kids have been buying Spider-Man toys for years, and kids will continue to buy Spider-Man toys because Spider-Man toys are awesome, and they want Spider-Man toys whether they've seen the movie or not.
Right.
The movie's just going to make them want it that much more, so they can do the new interesting dynamics that you're talking about with a little bit less hand-holding because they've already established
Right.
themselves
Yeah,
within
people are
the
gonna
minds of
watch it
children.
regardless because it's Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the voice actors.
Yes.
The voice actors in this movie are on point.
Oh yeah.
Loved it. Like I honestly, I'm not a big fan of Nick Cage. And Russell and I have gone back and forth on this a little bit because he loves Nick Cage.
It's okay. You're wrong. He's right.
I don't know if Nathan's being condescending or agreeing with me, but I like agreeing better, so I'm going to go with agreeing.
think
Nathan
it's
also
a little
loves
bit of
Nick
both.
Cage.
I guess I can't love Nick Cage.
He was agreeing.
He used to be good. Not a big fan of what he's done recently, with this being an exception.
What
Uh,
has he done recently?
A lot of not so great stuff.
So that's interesting to me, Corey, because I love Nick Cage, and he is easily the weakest voice actor in this movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm not saying he's the best.
Right.
I'm just saying I thought I would hate him
Oh, okay.
by the simple fact that he was in this movie because I'm prejudiced against Nick Cage, and I thought that I would hate Spider-Man Noir because
We
it
don't
is
tolerate any
just-
prejudices here.
I'm prejudiced against Nick Cage,
Why?
and I will die on that hill.
Okay.
Well,
Is it-
why you're on the hill? Why are you on the hill in the first place?
Is
I
it based
just-
on previous experiences with Nick Cage?
Just like Ghost Rider and
So you're a bigot.
against Nick Cage, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Edit? I don't know, is that too
Yeah,
much?
Maybe take that out. I
But
already called him out. But I didn't call him a bigot.
I was just
Mark
trying to get
the
the
time.
I'm just gonna have to listen to this episode.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get the definition of what a bigot was out there while also being funny, but I don't know if it didn't come across.
So you said his
So-
voice acting was weak in this?
yeah,
Comparatively, I think.
yeah.
I would agree.
yeah, comparatively. I mean, it was okay voice acting. It was better than just pulling some dude off the street.
Yeah. I think he actually did a pretty decent job. I believed he was the character.
Yeah.
When a lot of times when you get a big name celebrity to do a voice actor, a prime example in this movie it was John Mulaney. I didn't hear Spider-Ham. I heard John Mulaney.
Yes.
Like it didn't sound like I didn't believe that was Spider-Ham. I didn't.
Yeah, I might take back my previous statement actually because John
I didn't
Mulaney
believe
might be
that
the
was a
weakest.
character. I just thought it was John Mulaney voicing a character.
Right.
Now, that being said, that character is okay to do that with because he was very much a cartoon character and very aware of the fact that he was a cartoon
Yes.
character and everything he did was cartoon related.
Right.
That makes it okay to me because the character itself is not meant to be taken seriously by definition of being a cartoon character
Yeah.
in this whole universe.
Except for his one very serious line.
What was that?
There's a business you have to learn that you can't save everyone.
You know, in that moment, that was the most Spider-Ham he ever was to me. It's interesting that you brought that up. Like, I didn't realize it till like right now, but every other line, it was like, oh, that's just John Mulaney. But in that moment, like, that's Spider-Ham.
That was so not John Mulaney that I totally forgot that it was Spider-Ham that delivered that line.
Exactly. Yeah. That's so in that moment, he did prime voice acting, but the rest of the time, it just sounded just like him.
Serious line. Like
Yeah.
the rest of the time, he was hamming it up.
I'll give that bad joke a laugh. So I really was impressed with Jake Johnson's voice acting.
Oh fuck.
I like Jake
He was
Johnson.
Peter B.
in-
Parker, correct?
Yes, he's
Yes.
Peter B. Parker. He is also Nick in New Girl, and I like him in New Girl. But at no point in time am I impressed with anyone's acting on New Girl.
That's fair.
But I like the show. It's funny. I didn't know that Jake was gonna pull this way the fuck off.
Oh yeah.
So watching this, I was just floored by his
So to
voice
me, it's
acting for
interesting
this.
that I'd never even made the connection, which I haven't seen a lot of New Girl, but I
Mhm.
mean, he's in other stuff too, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
but
he's in some other things.
I didn't recognize him. To me, it wasn't the actor. It was Peter B. Parker.
I knew he was I knew when the trailer came out, the casting was released. I was like, Jake Johnson's gonna be Peter Parker. What? And then it wasn't really funny. Like, it was good. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't a joke. He was legitimately voice acting in this movie, and I fucking loved
That's
it.
how I felt about Diedrich Bader doing Batman in Brave and the Bold.
Yeah,
Because, like, I mean, he's always a comedy actor.
right.
And, like, everything he's in is like, such a silly character, but he kind of plays himself.
Mm-hmm.
So when I watched a couple episodes and I was like, man, I think I recognize that voice, but I have no idea who it is. This is really good. And then I looked it up and I was like, nah, he's not fucking Batman. You're fucking full of shit, IMDb. And then I watched it some more and I was like, huh, he wants to do two chicks at the same time. That's weird.
So I guess my litmus test for a good voice actor is, can I believe them as the character?
Yeah.
To the point where I don't think about the voice actor even being a voice actor.
Right, if it's somebody you recognize, because that's something that takes me out of a lot of things, because, like, what the fuck is his name? Stephen Bloom, I think,
Yeah.
that does Wolverine and everything.
Yeah, he does Wolverine. He's also Spike and Cowboy
And he
Bebop.
does Spike and Cowboy Bebop. He does a lot of voice acting.
It's typical of a lot of anime in general.
Yeah, and I hear him in everything, and I'm just like, oh, hey, it's Wolverine. It's not whoever that's supposed to be.
Yeah, so I had that same dynamic. The voice actor for Kirito in Sword Art Online, which you may or may not have seen,
No.
he is a very predominant voice actor. I think I'm going to butcher this pronunciation of his name, but I think it's Bryce Papenbrook. Anyway, he pretty much is your go-to guy for a protagonist in an anime,
Okay.
but unfortunately, he tends to do more or less the same voice.
Yep.
So, like, I hear a lot of bleed through between shows. It's like, oh, that sounded like this guy, and I look it up. Oh yeah, sure enough, that's this other character. Now it does get better. Like, I still think he's a great voice actor, because a lot of times I still believe him as the character. Like, I don't think like, oh, that's Bryce. It's like, oh, this is Kirito, or this is whoever X character is.
Right.
So I still think he's really good. But it's interesting that they reuse actors a lot in the business, and sometimes they're better than others.
So Shamik Moore does Miles Morales, and I was super impressed with the voice acting for Miles Morales, and when I thought he was 14. But then that also leads me to be super impressed with Shamik Moore's voice acting, because I thought the voice actor for
Was a
Miles
kid?
Morales was actually a kid.
I don't even know who that is.
He's in a he's in a movie called Dope, TV series called The Get Down.
He was in Dope?
Yeah.
I've heard of The Get Down. I think that's a Netflix show.
And that's kind of like the two big ones that I'm seeing.
Okay.
Or a show called The Incredible Crew, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And then we had Haley Steinfeld as Gwen Stacy.
Which she did a fantastic job, I thought.
Yes.
Like, I
She
never
was
would have picked
fantastic.
her out as being who she was.
And she is the little girl from the True Grit remake.
I haven't seen it.
She's also Emily in Pitch Perfect. She was in the Ender's Game movie. There's a couple other movies there. She's in Bumblebee. And then Mahershala Ali was Uncle Aaron. Shane, did you realize that?
I'm sorry, what?
That Mahershala Ali was Uncle Aaron. Do you need to see his face?
Mm-hmm.
It's that guy from Luke Cage that you love.
Marshala.
Mashallah.
Mar.
Okay. Marshala.
Yeah.
Edit.
Okay.
Marshala Ali.
There you go.
I'll leave that. Lily Tomlin was Aunt May.
I did not realize that he was Aaron, though.
You didn't?
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I thought he did really good. Zoe Kravitz had like 4 lines as Mary Jane.
Yeah, we're in territory of people I don't know, which is honestly a good thing.
Yeah.
I can appreciate actors that are lesser known getting voice roles because it prevents the problem that I said previously of it takes me out of the character. But like if I've never heard of them or if they've never really done a lot of voice acting, then I mean it's completely believable because this is the only time I've heard them and it's as this character.
Yeah, this
Right.
isn't like they didn't go out and get voice actors for this. Like all of these are actual actors, like live action actors.
Which that's interesting because not always can live action like actual. I don't want to use that word.
Actual actors.
Yeah, I hate saying that. That was what I was going to say, but
Like,
I hate
physical
that.
Let's just go with-
actors.
Physical
actors and voice actors.
Physical actors can't always do voice acting because there's a lot more. It's a lot different to do
Yeah.
You
voice
don't
acting.
have facial expressions or hand motions or anything to get across your emotions like you do
Yeah.
in physical acting. You have to get everything you can across with your voice, and then everything else is the animators.
And honestly, if you don't do a good enough job to match up what you're saying with the animation, because a lot of times the animation's done first,
Right.
and then they come back up and clean it up a little bit with what's done in studio with recording and whatnot. If you don't do a good enough job, it just doesn't match and it doesn't
Yeah.
flow. And it
Not
takes
to
you out.
mention if you're playing a car or something, then you don't have any facial expressions, or at least
Yeah.
a lot less, emotional ones or recognizable ones to get across your points. So you have to get them all through in your voice acting.
Yeah,
You know,
it can
it
be
didn't
even more
stop
difficult.
Larry the Cable Guy in Cars. I think he got his emotions across.
I think he did too.
I mean,
Just saying.
that's debatable, but okay.
Well, you're wrong.
That's okay. I can be wrong.
So we also
And
had,
about Nick Cage.
we also had Liev Schreiber as the Kingpin,
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
who I thought did a good job for all 4 lines that he had. Liev Schreiber has previous voice acting experience, though. He played the Storm King in the My Little Pony movie.
Oh shit, that was him? I didn't watch My Little Pony.
Okay,
he also
thank
played
you.
he also played Spots in Isle of Dogs, which is a really good fucking movie.
I'm gonna out myself. I am not a brony, and I know that might take some of my credibility away
dude,
on
you're-
this podcast
You're fucking
because
canceled.
I'm not a brony.
The internet just said fuck you.
And I've heard really good things about My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, but it's just not for me. And I can't make myself sit down and watch it.
I'm glad you're not a brony.
We might have to do it now that I've gone on this whole tangent about it.
I'm not.
I can't wait for the day that Shane finally gets the courage to come out as a brony.
I mean, we know.
You
Brandon.
realize I'm carrying a gun right now, right?
You know that,
That's a
right?
threat, and I have that recorded.
Russell, we do know a brony.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do.
Who?
This is a podcast, Shane. We can't just out people.
It
Yeah.
can be edited.
No.
Chris Pine was Peter Parker.
26-year-old.
Yeah, 26-year-old Miles Morales is Peter Parker.
Peter Parker A.
Peter Parker A. And then the rest of these are
So since we're
Random
talking about
cast.
Peter Parker A, was it the same spider that bit him that bit Miles?
No, I don't think so. I think the one that bit Miles was from a different universe because if you saw it, it was having the
dimensional strokes.
the dimensional like
And
desyncing
not everybody
and stuff.
came in at the same time either.
Right, because they set the machine off at several times, and if you were paying attention to the beginning of the movie, they talk about like, hey, did you feel that earthquake last night? And there were multiple times that they started this machine up. So like Gwen came first.
Yeah,
Right.
like a week before.
Yeah.
Before everyone else. And then like Peter B, I think, was probably the last one to come. And then somewhere in between Gwen and Peter B was Noir Spider, because I don't remember what her actual name is, but her robot's name is Spider. Oh yeah, Penny.
Penny Parker.
And Peter Porker.
Peter Porker. Spider-Man.
yeah.
Which
were
I
somewhere
love.
in between those.
I love how his nostrils are animated.
Yeah,
like his
also
eyes
the
are.
eyes, yeah.
That
I like how
always
his name
cracks me up.
sounds like a porn star.
Peter Porker.
Yeah.
I also really like how he wasn't a pig that was bit by a spider.
He was a spider.
He was a
bitten by
spider bit by a
a
pig.
pig, yeah.
And that cracks me up too.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
So let's get to the heart of the movie. The real tearjerker that got
Yep.
us all a little bit.
Yep.
The Stan Lee.
Oh, it
cameo.
got me
Yeah.
a whole lot this time. The first time I was like, oh, fuck. This time, I don't know what the fuck. I like almost started crying this time.
It hit me pretty hard too.
That was
harsh.
because that's his baby.
Yep.
Spider-Man, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were good
His best
friends.
friend.
I was like, oh, no.
Yeah. Fuck.
That was my favorite cameo of Stan Lee's.
I do
Still
wholeheartedly. Well, Mallrats is good, but I do think that this is my favorite Stan Lee cameo.
It might not be my favorite, but it's definitely up there. I don't know what my favorite would be if not this one, but this one's definitely like at least top 3.
This is probably number 2. Because you have the Mallrats one would be number 1 for me. And then Captain Marvel would be number 3 because it references the best one. And then maybe Guardians 2 because I really like the Watcher thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the Stan Lee cameo. And then like a couple other like things that were like reoccurring throughout the whole film. I love the graffiti. How that was like a constant thing and that was like a
Yes.
Miles thing.
Yeah.
And I
really
very
liked
much
that.
love that. And even like his suit was
Yes.
he graffitied his suit.
Yep.
Fucking loved that. I thought that was awesome. Cause I was sitting there as soon as they went down into the spider cave or whatever the hell it was Peter Parker A's
Spider Shed.
Yeah, essentially. I was like, oh, okay, which suit's he gonna get? Because I just thought he was gonna grab one of the suits, which he
Right.
did, to be fair, but he made it his own,
Yep.
and I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, because the suit always fits.
Eventually.
Such a good fucking cameo.
No
I
refunds
also-
or exchanges.
Really like the whole leap of faith thing.
Yeah,
Yes,
that was
that
fantastic
hit
too.
me really good.
The leap of faith thing was good.
And he just like jumps and does the swan dive off the building, which is like slightly referential to some other anime. Specifically, fuck, I can't remember it now. Major is the main character. Ghost in a Shell.
Hmm.
There's a scene in that where the Major, the main lead actress, and it jumps off a building and she like turns invisible and stuff. And it's this scene in Into the Spider-Verse was very reminiscent.
Yeah, where
of-
it's like upside down and shit.
yeah, like following.
Does she go
him,
through
even
some
the
glass?
Yeah, there's even
Yeah.
like some glass breaking
Okay.
and stuff.
Yeah, I
But,
remember
like
that
this
scene.
was very reminiscent of that.
So when he kicked off that tower, all I could think was whoever walks in that office is going to be like, how the fuck did this window get broken?
Yeah, he's still real bad at like grabbing on and letting go when he means to.
Yeah.
Which I never really like. This is the only time I ever questioned that in a Spider-Man universe. But it's like
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. The only time I ever questioned it, it's like, oh, okay. But then I was like, well, why is he having so much trouble? And then, like, because they kept drawing attention to him sticking to stuff, it raised questions in, like, why can he stick to stuff through his suit?
And
then
his shoes.
Through his shoes is the next point. Yeah. Because, like, it's like, well, I guess you could always argue that, like, well, the suit is specially made to allow his powers to go through it.
Yeah.
But, like,
But it's fucking
he's
Vans.
just wearing regular ass sneakers.
Yeah.
It's like, how does it work through that? And, like, I mean, arguably it doesn't work very well because he's slipping and falling off buildings all the fucking time.
Yeah.
But, like, it's just interesting. And also, like, the cloaking thing with his clothes, it's like, how does that work? And it's just, I don't know. It raised a lot of questions for me that I never would have questioned had they not drawn so much attention to his sticking.
Hey, man.
abilities.
Superman was bulletproof, but you think his outfit was?
I mean,
Just saying.
It's an interesting point.
Depends on
And
who's
he was
drawing
wearing
it.
Nikes, by the way.
Yeah,
Whatever.
they look like Jordans to me.
They weren't Vans.
I don't care.
Should care. Accuracy.
So, I think we're coming up on the end here. Let's get to final reviews, final ratings on
Easter
this
eggs?
show.
There's 110 of them.
Do you want to go through some of them?
You went through plenty of them. There's 110 of them.
Let's
I
just,
can hit some of
let's
them.
just mention at least the two that Russell caught through the phones because I thought that was really good.
Okay, yeah.
That is
Let's
in
hit
there.
it. Let's hit some
Yeah.
highlights here.
The creators.
Brian Michael Bendis,
Yeah.
which was the creator of Miles.
Yeah. Essentially, anytime someone pulls up a cell phone
Yeah,
and
there's
flips
Easter eggs.
through their contacts, there's Easter eggs. The two that I caught was Brian Michael Bendis and then
Steve Ditko.
Steve Ditko.
Who are those? Who are they?
Brian Michael Bendis is a writer. He created Miles Morales and Ultimate Spider-Man.
Oh.
And then Steve Ditko was one of the two people that are credited with creating Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do want to mention this one. There is a Donald Glover community cameo in this when he goes to Aaron's apartment. On the TV is an episode of Community with Donald Glover in a
Whoa.
Spider-Man suit
What?
because a lot of fans wanted Donald Glover to play Miles.
Yes.
It just wasn't going to happen with his age, really. If
I mean-
anything, he should have played the uncle like he did in Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah.
If they would have made Miles Morales Spider-Man right after Donald left Community, he would have been the perfect age to portray. I mean, he still would have been portraying younger, but that happens all the time.
Okay. So
But-
I have a quick question based off of something you just said, Nathan. The Donald Glover character in Homecoming, is that actually Prowler?
Yes.
That's a reference to Prowler?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he is Aaron Davis, and he mentions his nephew living in Brooklyn.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
Yeah. Good stuff. Miles Morales.
That's,
soon to come.
that's an Easter egg I
MCU.
missed in the MCU.
Yep.
I love that. All right, continue.
All right. Hopefully this doesn't close out like it just did.
Sorry, Bunny.
All right. The Marvel Comics Earth numbering system. As we all know, the main, this is what they say, the main Marvel universe is Earth 616.
Yes.
And the Ultimate Universe where Miles live is 1610. And then from there, Spider-Ham comes from 8311. Spider-Gwen comes from 65. Penny Parker comes from 14512. And Spider-Man Noir hails from Earth 90214. I almost wanted to say 90210.
Yeah.
Okay. This one's kind of cool.
Do they mention the Miguel?
The Miguel.
Yeah, he was in the Stinger,
Yeah. He's.
future Spider-Man.
I don't know what that. That universe is just called. It's called 2099, isn't it?
I don't think so.
I mean, it's probably 110. I'm at 25 right now.
Okay.
Because that was Miles' Phone has the creators in his contacts.
Yep.
This one I thought was kind of interesting. The Schnick. Wolverine's like famous
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
sound effect when his claws came out.
Yes.
They did that when Prowler's claws.
Yeah, when he kind of whoosh.
And I mean,
Oh.
there's a lot of good stuff in here. Like there's even like a small Deadpool reference
Mm-hmm.
on his bedroom wall where there's a pendant and then a metal hanging down, and it makes it look like the Deadpool logo.
Okay.
Jesus.
I think
Then
I might
there's a
have
lot of
caught that
references
one,
to the
actually.
number 42 as well.
which is, as we all know,
I
The
mean, if
meaning
we
of
all
life.
know it, what is it?
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
That's the
The
meaning of life. Yeah.
Or Jackie Robinson's number
Because Jackie Robinson is the meaning
was
of
a
life.
Brooklyn Dodger.
Oh, or that.
That's
I
what
went
they were
with the
talking
nerdy
about in
reference.
here. There's all kinds of them. Like, all right, what's the B stand for in Peter B. Parker?
Benjamin?
Why did Peter B. Parker step on a glass wrapped up in a cloth at his wedding?
Because he's Jewish?
Is he?
No.
Or is Mary Jane Jewish? Or did they just like Mazel Tov?
What?
That was in the cartoon.
No,
No,
yeah,
it
they definitely
was,
stepped
but
on glass.
Yeah. Again,
Watson?
TGI Spideys.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh. There's a lot of references to stuff when you look at New York at the different versions. Like there's a different name for Google. There's actually a reference to Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead. It's called From Dusk Till Dawn.
I've actually so I've seen memes calling that one out. Like if you look like in the billboards and stuff, it's like, oh hey, here's this reference to this thing. And
Yeah, there was
apparently
one
there's
talking
all
about
kinds of
Inglewood.
Yep.
So
Planet Inglewood.
yeah, so Inglewood became the center of like movies and shit instead of Hollywood.
Do you guys
in
want to
that
know
universe.
where Gwen Stacy is in Miles' universe? The real Gwen?
Hit me.
The Mary Janes. That's the band she was in.
Yep.
She's the drummer. They're probably on tour because it's in the background.
Yeah.
The Mary Janes. Oh. Another 42 reference. Oh. That restaurant that Peter was so happy to go to get his burger,
Mhm.
it had a rating of C,
Yeah, I saw that,
which
too.
isn't good.
No.
And he
Yeah,
couldn't
health
wonder
code.
why it got closed
Yeah.
down. I don't understand why this place got
Yeah,
closed
as soon as he
down.
said that, I like seen there's like a little subtle. I don't know how subtle it is, but it almost looked like the camera shifted a little bit, focus, so you could see the thing in the back. Or maybe my eye was just drawn to it after he said that. But I definitely noticed, like immediately after he said that, the health code C rating.
Oh my god. And it crashed.
All right. That
And
was
started
Easter
over.
eggs.
So if you really want to take a look at these Easter eggs and you're really interested, like I said, there's 110 of them. They're super informative. And you could go through those without watching the movie and essentially have seen the movie. Because
believe
that's
it.
how many there are.
I believe it. I think we hit the highlights though. I think we
Yeah.
did a pretty good job.
That's
The
good.
important stuff.
Let's get into reviews. So the way I do reviews on this show is different from everything else we do reviews on. I don't do a 1 out of 10 scale. I do, would you buy it? Would you rent it? Should you subscribe to it on a service? How would you watch it? How much do you recommend it? Based off of that alone. I think that question is probably answered for some of us, considering we watched it on a Blu-ray. So let's go ahead and start with who owned the Blu-ray.
You should buy this movie. Go completely out of your way to buy this movie. Cross the road, break into a closed Walmart, leave a 20 on the counter, and go home and watch it because it's awesome.
I would agree with some of that.
I mean, don't actually commit a crime.
Yeah, leave 25 tax, people. God.
Buy it legit. Like
I thought it was a
cross
real
the
good
road.
movie. I definitely think it's worth buying. It's not on any subscription service that I'm aware of yet.
No, I don't think so. It'll be on Disney Plus at some point, maybe. Well, no, maybe not because it's Sony.
Yeah.
Can they put their stuff on Netflix? Are
Sony
they
can
going to
do
put their
whatever they
stuff
want.
on Sony
Interesting-
Plus?
Interesting question.
Sony
there.
owns Crackle, so it would go on Crackle. If
What the
anything.
fuck is Crackle?
Yeah, exactly.
That's another.
Oh, I know what it is. I'm just
Most
saying
people don't.
Nobody watches Crackle.
Which is
Sony.
why Disney will be the only production studio to successfully have its own streaming service.
Yeah,
Nobody
because
watches
they own
Crackle.
everything. I watched a little bit of Crackle
Stop.
purely because it was free,
Oh,
but it was very ad heavy.
I used Crackle until it wasn't free anymore.
And I think that's why most people know what Crackle is, because it's like, oh, hey, a free streaming service that has some okay movies occasionally that I have to sit through a bunch of ads, but, it's like watching TV, right?
Yeah.
And then, you just go back to Netflix after you watch your one movie that
Especially
you really wanted to
since
see.
90% of what was on Crackle was on Netflix anyway.
Yeah, also true. I also made the mistake of trying to watch Joe Dirt 2 on Crackle.
oh yeah, I did that too.
Ugh, I didn't even make it like 5 minutes into that movie. We turned it off because I could not handle it.
It was just too funny.
It was definitely too something. But I do recommend watching this movie. I do recommend going out of your way to watch this movie. It is a very good movie. Arguably one of the best Spider-Man movies that exists at this point in time. I would even put it up there with the Tom Holland movie,
Yeah.
which was also really good. If you like Spider-Man, you need to watch this movie. If you like animation, you should probably watch this movie. And it's a good standalone movie, even if you don't know the other stuff. It's just a really good movie. Nathan, how do you feel?
I mean, I'd buy it.
You think it's worth buying?
Yeah. I also would put it up there with Homecoming, but not like over it. Because they're two different movies,
Agreed.
Equal but separate.
No, one's animated, one's not. That's how I look at it. And it's two different Spider-Man, so I don't know.
It's like 7 different Spider-Man.
Well, I'm talking about the main Spider-Man.
I really thought it was Miles. I like that Miles is the main character in this one. Like everything else is Peter Parker, but I really like that this was Miles.
I don't like that they thought they needed so many Peter Parkers to carry a Miles Morales Spider-Man movie.
They only had like 2.
But he carried
Parkers.
them in
Oh,
the end.
In the end, he did.
Yeah.
And most of the movie was about him. It wasn't.
Yeah, he showed he was the more superior Spider-Man.
No, he's
That's
not the
something else.
superior Spider-Man.
He showed he was.
Otto Octavius is the superior Spider-Man.
I would love to see them do Miles Morales Superior Spider-Man out of this with Olivia
Well, that would be weird.
Octavius. So for me, I recommend watching this movie before you build it up in your head, because I'm really bad about that, and that's what I did. Although I enjoyed this movie, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would buy it, but I also don't buy movies, and I typically only watch movies once. Unless
Says the
it's
guy that was
absolutely
talking about
phenomenal.
rewatchability in movies.
Yeah.
Right, which there's like 20 movies.
Hypocrisy in this guy.
No, there's only like 20 movies that I believe have rewatchability. Like maybe
Which
more.
2 movies in the MCU don't you think have rewatchability?
Okay, I mean outside of the MCU. All right, talking outside of the MCU.
I also feel like you just look for a reason to complain in every movie you ever watch.
No, it's just no movie's ever. gonna
Have
be
you
perfect.
ever watched a perfect movie?
No, the closest. There's like 3 movies that I've come close to.
Is one of them Iron Man?
No.
Any one of them
No, okay,
Iron
hold on.
Man?
Let's go off on this tangent just briefly. What is the best movie you've ever seen?
Oh,
God.
Currently,
I know.
right now in my head, it's Blade Runner.
The new Blade Runner
No,
or the original?
The original Blade Runner.
Okay.
But we also just watched that, and I also just tried to pick it apart. So, with very little success, but you can listen to that soon on our DQP Does the Blade Runner movie.
Really? I only put it right above my feelings on Akira, which you can listen to on one of these Drafty Toons podcasts.
Also true. Probably a previous episode to this episode.
Let's hope so.
Go back and listen.
Yeah, no, I like rewatchability, which is why I'm like kind of heavy-handed on it, because there's only like a handful of movies that I actually enjoy rewatching. For the most part, 90% of the Marvel movies I enjoy rewatching. I could go without ever seeing Ant-Man again, though.
How do you feel about this one?
I would maybe watch this again with someone who hasn't seen it, so I could enjoy their initial reactions to the surprises and the emotional roller coaster that the movie is.
But you don't necessarily see yourself sitting down to watch it purely by yourself again.
No, I don't think so. And if they do a sequel, so here's a final thought that I had that I wanted to get into. I want a sequel. If they do a sequel, I'll probably rewatch it to refreshen how this universe works.
Sure.
And they hint at the sequel at the end where Miles is laying in bed. Well, where Miles is laying in bed and the rift comes over him and you hear Gwen's voice.
Yeah.
But here's my issue with them doing a sequel. They now, even if it's just a throwaway line, they have to figure out how to negate the cellular degeneration that happens when crossing dimensions.
I think they already did.
In this?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
The watch that Miguel has made or gets.
I assume that's
Oh,
It's
okay.
going to prevent the cellular degeneration, and it's going to allow you to just like cross by yourself without using a super collider.
Oh, shit.
That'd be cool.
that's what I took away from that scene as well.
I was too ecstatic about having Spider-Man 2099 on screen because I love Spider-Man 2099. I was actually disappointed that he wasn't in this. But
Sequel, maybe.
yeah,
If they do a sequel, which
hoping.
I don't know why they wouldn't do a sequel.
Yeah, it
It's
did
a
really
great
well.
movie, and
I
a lot of
also
people
want
really liked it.
I also want Madam Web. Damn it.
Which they showed that the universe was connected with webs when they were
Yeah.
in the...
Yeah, I love.
Which is why
that
I
shit.
think they call it the Spiderverse as opposed to the multiverse.
But this is definitely worth watching. It's definitely worth borrowing from a friend to watch.
Would you rent it? Would you pay money to see
I
it?
would pay money to see it. I'd rent it from either a streaming service or your local video store if
Assuming you
one
hadn't
still
seen
exists in your area.
it. You can rent stuff digitally now too.
Yeah.
Go to your local Blockbuster. No.
There's at least one left.
we still have family video, right?
We do, yeah, here in town.
So, yeah, I mean that's kind of how I feel about it. If I was gonna do a DQP Does rating, I would give it a
No, go ahead.
9.
You give it a 9?
Yeah, I'd give it a 9.
It's pretty solid.
I'd
Yeah.
give it a 9.5.
9.5.
I'd give it a canned ham.
I feel like that's a reference I should get that I don't.
Oh, but you will if you listen to Blade Runner.
We have Easter eggs in our own show now.
It's all about popping the boys.
Wow.
Callbacks. Man.
That's a wrestling phrase, but I won't plug that on here.
All the callbacks.
Shit.
I thought it was pretty good. I would give it a solid 9 as well.
Right on.
If I had to give it a 9 out of 10.
I do
Since this
love
is a
canned ham.
crossover, I feel like it's okay to do numbered ratings.
There we go.
That's kind of what I was getting at.
All right. Well, unless anybody has any other final thoughts.
Yeah, I said canned ham, not spam. So I just want to be clear
Okay.
to listeners.
I think we can all agree that you should check out our other content. It's all really good. All of it. We all like it. We enjoy doing it. Give us a subscribe on wherever you listen to podcasts too.
Yeah, it's a leap of faith.
Rate and review. That helps us out, as always. You know, do all the good things. Help us out. We really appreciate it. And nobody else has anything else to plug or say, then
Yeah, follow, Drafty Q on the Twitter.
There you go.
because we're constantly coming out with content for everybody.
I have one last note.
Hit me.
With great power
Don't
comes great.
you dare finish that line.
That's all, folks. This has been a production of the Drafty Quarters Podcast Network.